Welcome to this week's Hymn of the Week. This week we have ELW 423, Shall We Gather at the River, a tune and text by the famous writer Robert Lowry. This was composed in 1864. Abraham Lincoln had his second term as President of the United States, and the Civil War was still going on. And there was also a lot of tragedy and trauma going on. There's reports of the yellow fever, a plot trying to spread that in the north. So all these things are going on as Lowry writes this piece. The tune, Hanson Place, is titled for the place he was working at, the Hanson Place Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York. And he, again, lots of stories about how he composed this. But from what I think is credible, he sat down and he began to think about, I'm sure he was affected by the Civil War, the things going on in the world or in the United States or where he was living at that time. So I think probably it made a lot of sense for him to come up with this text. One thing we do know is that there was a focus on death, the river of death, but not so much a focus on, as we look at here, the river, the pure and beautiful river that flows by the throne of God, the water of life. And that's how this music came about. Lowry sat down, started playing, and all of a sudden it came out, as we see it now. That's the story that I think that is the most credible. There's lots of other theories that it was in response to tragedy and things going on in Brooklyn, but we're not going to go there. Instead, I'd prefer taking that simple explanation, because there's a power when someone that is gifted sits down and just takes a theme like the river of life instead of the river of death or the water of life, and then transforms that into not just something that people sing for worship, but also something that is a statement of faith, particularly at the time that he wrote it. So another interesting little fact about this is that in 1860, we know that Lowry did not like this. He felt it had a brass feel to it. He didn't really much care for the tune, Hanson Place. And it's really interesting that this is one of his more popular hymns, even though he didn't really like it. I would like to interpret this definitely in the vein and spirit of All Saints. Receiving an idea from the GIA Quarterly Journal, a person labels himself DM, but in this year's GIA's Quarterly Journal, he allows us to think of a perspective, or encourages us to think about walking through doors. And as we enter the door, what saints may have gone through those doors. And that's how I'd like to interpret this as an organist, as we sing this, Shall We Gather at the River, reminding ourselves that where we walk, how many saints have walked there before us and will walk after us. If that's at home, if that's at a church, wherever you're walking. So this is Shall We Gather at the River. I want to give credit to Lorenz Publishing. I'll be using one of their, I guess we'll call it an intonation from 1994 at the beginning and in between the verses. I do think even though Robert Lowry didn't like the marching effect, it just is there. And coming from the collection Happy Voices, that's how I would also like to interpret this hymn as we lead, reminding ourselves that really Robert Lowry was thinking about it in a very positive way. And I hope it encourages you this week, and thank you for listening.